So here's a scenario for you. Imagine being chased by a debt collection agency for thousands of pounds in unpaid energy bills. You're being accused of that, except you actually don't owe any money. This is what has been happening to 79-year-old John Spink.
Yes, he got in touch with the Radio 4's Money Box, and British Gas, who was involved, has since admitted it was a mistake, offered him compensation. And Dan's with us this morning to explain a little more about how this began. Do you want to just take us through the story?
Yeah, this is a crazy story, and I look into a lot of things like this on Moneybox, but this is right up there. So this all started in September last year. John had some trouble with his gas supply. He gets his electricity from a different supplier, so we're just talking about gas. And essentially what happened from September, he got a smart meter installed, and he was told various times between then and just a couple of weeks ago, you owe £7,500, £6,700, £4,500. Anyway, all of these crazily wild bills culminated in April. Finally, he was told, no, you owe £2,500, and because you haven't paid it, we're going to pass your details to a debt collection agency. Now, all the while, John and his friend and neighbour Angela, who was helping him through all this, because John's not on the internet, like a lot of people, several million people, not online, doesn't have a phone. He was basically telling British Gas this whole time, look, there's no way I owe this money. You know, I've been owing like a sort of £100 a quarter for years. I just don't owe this money. It was a very, very big problem. And again, the reason he got in touch with Moneybox is because just a few weeks ago, all of a sudden it went from you owe us this money to we've passed your details to a debt collection agency. That's the point at which he told me, was really, really worried, didn't know what to do, and that's why he contacted Moneybox, as he told me.
Well, I thought, what sort of system are they running? You know, that all this sort of thing can happen. How can they have a system where a person like myself has, you know, right up until recent times, spent very, very little on the gas. You know, a matter of, what can we say, £100 a year. How can you suddenly get a bill for £1,000?
Now, there was a happy ending in the end, as you alluded to, I think, in your introduction. We got in touch with British Gas. We started investigating. Now, they did admit horrendous mistake. They should have sorted out a lot earlier. They recognised he didn't owe this money. And in fact, they've actually made quite a substantial gesture financially, compensation-wise, for John. But again, that issue of energy suppliers passing details to debt collection agencies, well, that's what we're looking at Moneybox on Radio 4 at 12 o'clock today.
How quickly can this escalate? Because the stress of being told you owe money to a utility company is bad enough. But as soon as a debt collection agency is involved, this is when you just think, like, this is out of my control. It's really, really unnerving.
Yeah, and John and Angela had spent months and months and months trying to just basically communicate with British Gas and explain all this. And for them, the sort of straw that broke the camel's back was as soon as they got that letter saying, right, debt collection agency's involved now. And the interesting thing is they kept all the letters, all the messages, and I've seen them. And I've seen these messages, I've seen these letters saying, we are going to pass your details, we have passed your details. Now, British Gas insists they weren't actually actioned, but of course that
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter because John has been sent a letter saying that's it, debt collection agency. And I think I tried to get a sense of the scale on this issue, so how much this is happening to people. Now, the Energy Ombudsman, unfortunately, they weren't able to provide me with any data that we were able to use. But Citizens Advice, interestingly, they say they are seeing more and more people come to them for help because they're in debt with their energy supplier and they're being chased for debt collection agencies getting involved, and also things like CCJs, so county court judgments. And although those numbers are small, Citizens Advice told me they are increasing. And in fact, there's a lady called Anne Pardo who I spoke to at Citizens Advice. She's got some really good practical advice about what you can do if you're in trouble with debt from your energy supplier.
Well, in the first instance, energy suppliers, when they become aware that customers are falling behind on their bills or somebody calls them and says that they're struggling, they should be doing everything that they can to work out an affordable and reasonable payment plan with that individual that they can afford to pay on a long-term basis. And they should also be referring them to any support services which might be available. So some suppliers have grant systems which will give people support on their bills. They can also refer to local citizens' advice to help people to kind of reach an affordable debt repayment plan, make sure they're claiming any benefits that they're entitled to.
So where have you got to, Dan, in trying to work out the bigger picture in terms of how many people are caught up in similar circumstances?
Right, so I've got a really big number for you now. £3.1 billion. That is how much energy debt there is currently owed to energy suppliers. And that's not like, oh, you might owe a bit on your bill, but you'll pay it off over the summer. This is bad debt. That is bad debt that is not going to get paid back by people who owe it. And also, I mean, Ofgem, obviously that's the regulator in the energy sector, that tells us in a statement, it said, we expect suppliers to exhaust all other options before resorting to any debt collection methods. So there's a lot of pressure on the industry. Energy UK, they speak for suppliers. They say, look, industry can't solve this on our own. They want us to sit down with the next government. It's a huge, big issue, this, and particularly we're interested to find out if that debt collection agency route is being used by more suppliers. So get in touch with moneybox@bbc.co.uk.
And at least for John, who's 79 years old, you know, has been resolved. So it's, you know,
Happy
one.
ending. Yeah, one of a lot, I suspect.
Midday, Radio 4.
12 o'clock, Radio 4. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dan.